She was trapped in the suffocating darkness of an abandoned steel mill, terrified and completely out of options. Outside, a squad of heavily armed mercenaries welded the only exit shut, trapping the young journalist inside with them. They thought it was going to be an easy kill. But what these ruthless assassins didn't realize was that they hadn't just locked a helpless woman in a cage. They had accidentally trapped themselves in the dark with a lethal Navy SEAL and his fiercely loyal combat K9, and the ultimate game of survival was about to begin. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments which country you are watching from. And if you love stories that melt your heart, please subscribe to support our channel. The smell of oxidized iron and decaying concrete hung heavy in the midnight air. Logan stood perfectly still in the shadows of the abandoned steel mill. He was an active-duty Navy SEAL, currently taking a rare 2-week leave from his grueling deployment schedule. He possessed a tall, athletic build forged by years of relentless combat training. Dressed entirely in a black tactical sweater and dark cargo pants, he blended seamlessly into the surrounding darkness. Beside him sat Rex. Rex was a purebred German shepherd with a thick black and tan coat, sharp ears, and incredibly intelligent eyes. He was a fully trained K9, disciplined, fiercely loyal, and lethal when commanded. Tonight was supposed to be a simple, quiet exercise. Logan wanted to keep Rex sharp, practicing stealth maneuvers and tracking in close quarters. The sprawling, decaying factory on the outskirts of the city provided the perfect obstacle course. Massive smelting vats, rusted conveyor belts, and twisted elevated catwalks created a complex labyrinth of metal and deep shadow. Logan raised a single finger. Rex instantly dropped his belly to the cold concrete, making absolutely no sound. They waited in the dark, listening to the cold wind howl through the broken skylights far above. The quiet rhythm of the night shattered suddenly. A sharp, frantic scraping sound echoed from the perimeter fence. Logan lowered his hand and signaled Rex to stay put. He shifted his weight smoothly, his military boots making zero noise as he glided behind a massive rusted gear to observe. Someone was running blindly through the scrapyard outside. Heavy, uneven breathing, and the snapping of dry weeds grew steadily louder. A figure practically threw themselves against the rusted side door of the factory. The corrugated metal groaned loudly as the person squeezed through a broken bottom panel, collapsing onto the dusty floor inside. Logan watched intently from his elevated platform. The intruder was a woman. Her name was Maya. She was a young investigative journalist with messy brown hair and wire-rimmed glasses that were slipping down her nose. She wore a beige trench coat that was now covered in thick mud and torn at the hem. She scrambled to her feet, her chest heaving heavily with panic. Both of her arms clutched tightly around a leather messenger bag, as if her very life depended on it. She looked wildly over her shoulder, her wide eyes reflecting pure, unadulterated terror. Logan remained hidden, his eyes scanning the surrounding darkness. He analyzed the situation instantly. She was not a vagrant looking for shelter. She was running from something organized and dangerous. Less than a minute later, the unmistakable roar of high-output engines tore through the quiet street outside. Tires screeched violently against the wet asphalt. Squealing brakes signaled the abrupt arrival of multiple heavy vehicles. Harsh, blinding beams from high-powered headlights pierced through the cracked windows of the factory, sweeping erratically across the metallic debris. Maya gasped sharply. She stumbled backward, tripping over a coil of thick industrial chain, and fell hard onto her knees, scraping them against the rough stone. She dragged herself desperately behind a pile of steel beams, trying to make herself as small as possible in the dirt. The heavy thud of combat boots hitting the ground echoed from the front courtyard. Men were barking orders in crisp, disciplined tones. Logan narrowed his eyes, his tactical mind racing. The voices were too calm, too coordinated for common street criminals. These were professionals. Rex let out a very low, barely audible growl from the back of his throat. The hair along his spine stood straight up. The dog sensed the sheer malice radiating from the men outside. Logan knelt beside the German shepherd and firmly clamped a hand over his snout, offering a soothing, commanding stroke behind the ears. Rex understood immediately and fell dead silent, his muscles tensing for action. Logan crept forward to a better vantage point near a shattered second-story window. 3 black-armored SUVs idled aggressively in the courtyard below. Over a dozen men clad in full black tactical gear and heavy Kevlar vests swarmed the perimeter. They carried suppressed submachine guns and wore advanced night vision goggles strapped to their tactical helmets. They moved with terrifying efficiency, fanning out and securing every possible exit of the compound in a matter of seconds. 2 massive mercenaries approached the heavy double steel doors at the main entrance. They did not just push them shut. One of the men pulled a portable acetylene torch from his heavy canvas pack. A brilliant, blinding shower of blue and white sparks erupted into the dark night. They were welding the main doors completely shut from the outside. Logan felt a cold chill run down his spine. He recognized the tactic immediately. This was an absolute containment protocol. They were sealing the factory to ensure nothing and no one could get out alive. Once the massive front doors were fused securely with molten steel, the remaining men outside stacked up tightly at the secondary side entrance. It was the exact door Maya had just squeezed through. They breached it forcefully, the rusted metal frame buckling and snapping under their synchronized kick. Beams from tactical flashlights mounted on their weapons immediately sliced through the pitch-black interior of the factory, cutting through the thick dust in the air. Maya clamped a hand tightly over her own mouth to stifle her terrified sobs. She curled into a tight ball in the darkness below the stairs, her knuckles turning white as she gripped her leather bag. Logan knew he had a choice to make right then. He was completely unarmed, carrying only a standard folding survival knife in his pocket. He was severely outgunned, outnumbered, and physically trapped in a giant steel cage with a civilian target. But walking away and hiding was never in a Navy SEAL's nature. He looked down at Rex, giving the dog a silent nod. The hunt had officially begun, and this abandoned factory was now a deadly closed arena. The heavy steel door slammed shut behind the last mercenary, sealing the factory in a suffocating silence. A sharp electronic whine pierced the dark as the intruders activated their night vision goggles. The lenses glowed with a faint, eerie green luminescence. A tall, broad-shouldered man, acting as the squad leader, raised his fist. He signaled silently with sharp hand gestures, directing his men to split into 3 distinct search teams. They moved with terrifying precision. There was no reckless shouting and no careless stomping. They communicated purely through tactical signs and advanced headset radios. Their heavy combat boots rolled softly from heel to toe, minimizing noise against the concrete floor. They swept their suppressed rifles across the rusted machinery, checking blind spots and elevated walkways. Deep in the bowels of the factory floor, Maya crawled frantically beneath a massive, rusted coal chute. The space was incredibly cramped and smelled sharply of sulfur and decades of damp rot. She huddled her knees to her chest, trying to control her violent shivering. Her right knee was bleeding profusely from her earlier fall, sending a sharp, stinging pain up her leg with every tiny movement. She reached into her trench coat pocket with trembling fingers and pulled out her smartphone. The screen illuminated her tear-streaked face with a harsh blue light. She stared at the top corner of the screen in pure despair. No service. A tiny red icon indicated that a localized signal jammer was active. She was completely cut off from the outside world. She shoved the useless phone back into her pocket and clutched her leather messenger bag tighter against her chest. Inside that bag was a small encrypted USB flash drive. It contained highly classified financial ledgers and client lists proving the city mayor was directly running a massive human trafficking syndicate. Maya squeezed her eyes shut, silent tears streaming down her dirty cheeks. She knew exactly what these men would do to her once they found that drive. High above the factory floor, Logan maneuvered silently across a precarious network of overhead exhaust pipes. He moved like a shadow, his balance absolute despite the slick layer of industrial grease coating the metal. He tracked the movements of the mercenaries below, analyzing their patrol patterns. He noted their weapons, advanced optics, and body armor. They were heavily equipped, but they possessed a fatal flaw. They relied entirely on their technology to see in the dark. Logan, however, relied on raw instinct, rigorous training, and the apex predator waiting patiently in the shadows. He looked down and locked eyes with Rex. The German Shepherd was hidden behind a stack of wooden shipping crates directly across from Maya's hiding spot. Rex watched his handler intently, awaiting the silent command to strike. The situation below was deteriorating rapidly. Two mercenaries from the perimeter search team slowly approached the coal chute area. Their green lenses scanned the floor methodically. The lead mercenary suddenly stopped and held up a closed fist. The man behind him froze instantly, raising his weapon to his shoulder. The leader pointed his rifle barrel down at the concrete. A fresh, dark red droplet of blood glistened faintly in the dust. It led in a straight, undeniable line directly beneath the rusted coal chute. Maya heard the soft crunch of glass under a heavy boot. She stopped breathing entirely. The metallic click of a weapon safety switching off echoed like a thunderclap in the confined space. A harsh, narrow beam of white light suddenly flooded the cramped area beneath the chute, illuminating her terrified face. She squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the inevitable blast of gunfire, but the gunshot never came. Logan dropped silently from the exhaust pipe directly above the two mercenaries. Gravity accelerated his descent, turning his dense, muscular frame into a lethal projectile. He landed squarely on the shoulders of the lead mercenary, the impact driving the man violently to the concrete floor. Before the mercenary could even register the attack, Logan clamped his strong hands around the helmeted head and twisted with brutal, calculated force. A sharp crack echoed through the dark, and the man went instantly limp. The second mercenary panicked, stumbling backward and raising his rifle toward the sudden threat. He opened his mouth to shout a warning to the rest of the team. A terrifying snarl erupted from the blackness before a single word could escape the mercenary's throat. Rex launched himself over the shipping crates like a dark missile. The massive dog slammed into the second man's chest with explosive force, knocking him completely off balance. The mercenary's rifle discharged into the ceiling as he fell backward onto the hard ground. Rex clamped his powerful jaws directly over the man's right forearm, his sharp teeth sinking deep through the thick tactical fabric and into the muscle. The bone crushed under the immense bite force, forcing the man to release his grip on the weapon entirely. The mercenary screamed in agonizing pain, reaching for a combat knife strapped to his vest with his free hand. Logan moved with blinding speed. He closed the distance in a single stride, driving the heel of his combat boot directly into the man's jaw. The impact snapped the mercenary's head back against the concrete, rendering him completely unconscious. Silence crashed back down upon the factory floor, broken only by the low, warning growls vibrating in Rex's throat. Logan quickly dragged the two heavy bodies out of the main aisle and into the deep shadows behind the crates. He stripped the night vision goggles from the leader's helmet, tossing them onto the floor and crushing the delicate lenses beneath his boot so the enemy could not track them. He then turned and crouched low by the coal chute, extending a calm, steady hand toward the trembling woman hidden inside. Logan grabbed Maya's trembling hand and pulled her out from under the rusted chute. "We need to move now," he whispered sharply. He turned back to the two incapacitated mercenaries. He grabbed them by their heavy tactical vests. His muscles strained as he dragged their dead weight across the concrete floor. Rex flanked them, his golden eyes scanning the darkness for any approaching threats. Logan headed toward the back wall where a massive iron grate covered an old industrial drainage shaft. He wedged his fingers beneath the heavy metal grid. With a sharp exhale, he hoisted it upward. The hinges shrieked softly. He pushed Maya toward the dark opening. "Climb down the ladder," he commanded. Maya did not hesitate. She slung her leather bag over her shoulder and descended into the pitch-black abyss. Logan pushed the two bodies over the edge. They tumbled down into the darkness with heavy, wet thuds. He signaled Rex. The German Shepherd leaped flawlessly into the hole. Logan followed last, pulling the heavy iron grate shut above them just as a fresh sweep of flashlight beams cut across the factory floor above. The underground network was a labyrinth of massive concrete pipes and rusted water mains. The air smelled of stagnant water, old decay, and oxidized iron. Total darkness surrounded them. Logan pulled a small tactical penlight from his pocket. He clicked it on, cupping the beam with his hand to emit only a faint red glow. The dim light revealed Maya leaning against the damp, curved wall of the tunnel. She was hyperventilating, her hands gripping her knees as she tried to process the sheer trauma of the last 10 minutes. Rex sat loyally by her side. The intelligent K9 nudged her trembling hand with his wet nose, offering a strange sense of comfort in the terrifying dark. "Breathe," Logan said, his voice a low, steady rumble that commanded calm. "Slow your heart rate. You are safe for the moment." Maya took several deep, shaky breaths. She looked up at the towering soldier standing before her. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice echoing faintly off the curved concrete walls. "My name is Logan. This is Rex," he replied, keeping his eyes focused on the dark tunnel ahead. "I was using this facility for a training exercise. We ended up in the middle of your mess. Now, I need to know exactly what is happening. Those men upstairs are not local street thugs. They are private military contractors. They are highly trained and heavily armed. Why are they hunting you?" Maya swallowed hard. She pulled the leather messenger bag tightly against her chest, like a physical shield. "My name is Maya. I am an investigative reporter for the City Chronicle. 2 days ago, a whistleblower handed me a digital ledger. It was a complete financial breakdown of a massive human trafficking syndicate operating out of the commercial shipping ports." Logan kept his expression entirely neutral, but his tactical mind processed the information rapidly. "That kind of illicit operation requires serious political cover to survive," he noted. "Exactly," Maya nodded, her voice gaining a fraction of strength. "The ledgers prove that the city mayor is the primary beneficiary. He uses shell corporations to launder the blood money. He personally authorizes the port clearances for the shipping containers. I spent the last 48 hours verifying the offshore accounts. I finally got the hard proof on a flash drive inside this bag. If you had the proof, you should have gone straight to the federal authorities," Logan stated. "Why are you hiding in an abandoned steel mill in the middle of the night?" Tears welled up in Maya's eyes again. "I panicked. I knew the local police were hopelessly compromised. The mayor controls the entire police precinct. I did the only thing I could think of. I called my editor-in-chief. His name is Arthur Pendleton." Logan pictured the man as Maya described him. Arthur was an older gentleman with silver hair and a warm smile, a father figure who had mentored her since she was a rookie reporter fresh out of college. "Arthur told me to run," Maya continued, wiping a stray tear from her dirt-streaked cheek. "He said the federal building downtown was too dangerous because the mayor had spies everywhere. He gave me the coordinates to this exact factory. He promised he would arrange a private helicopter to extract me and take me directly to the FBI regional headquarters in the next state. I was supposed to wait on the roof for the chopper." Logan frowned deeply. He looked up at the thick concrete ceiling. A helicopter extraction from an abandoned industrial zone without filing a federal flight plan. That takes serious logistical power. That is power a newspaper editor does not usually possess. Before Maya could process his rising doubt, Logan knelt beside the two bodies he had thrown down the shaft. He systematically stripped them of their useful gear. He retrieved 2 spare ammunition magazines and a sleek, compact sidearm. He tucked the pistol securely into his waistband. Then, he found the most valuable item. He unclipped a high-frequency tactical radio from the squad leader's shoulder harness. The small green light blinked steadily in the dark. Logan pressed the receiver close to his ear and adjusted the volume dial to the lowest possible setting. The encrypted channel crackled with static before a cold, authoritative voice cut through the silence. "Bravo team, report!" the voice demanded. The tone was absolutely devoid of human emotion. This was Vance. He was the commander of the mercenary squad, a seasoned killer who treated human life like a simple math equation. "Bravo team is unresponsive, sir," another mercenary replied over the radio. "We lost their tracking signals near the main smelting furnace." "Disregard the main floor," Vance commanded, his voice sharp and incredibly precise. "The target has likely moved below ground. The perimeter is fully sealed. She cannot escape the outer walls." Maya leaned closer to Logan, her eyes wide with fresh terror as she listened to the radio chatter. "Move assault teams to the subterranean access points," Vance continued without hesitation. "Access shaft 3 is located exactly 20 yards north of the central boiler. Access shaft 4 is beneath the east stairwell. The underground drainage pipes run in a direct grid exactly 40 feet below the factory floor. Box her in." Logan felt the blood run completely cold in his veins. He looked directly at Maya. All the remaining color had drained from her face. Vance did not sound like a man searching blindly through an unknown building. He sounded like a man reading directly from a highly detailed architectural blueprint. "He knows the exact layout," Maya whispered, her entire body trembling violently. "How does he know the layout?" Logan turned off the radio and hooked it securely to his tactical belt. He looked deep into Maya's eyes, delivering the harsh, undeniable truth without sugarcoating it. "Because he was given the blueprints. Your editor did not send you here to be rescued. He sent you here to die. This factory is not an extraction point. It is a designated kill box." Maya collapsed back against the damp concrete wall. The devastating realization completely crushed her spirit. Arthur Pendleton had betrayed her. He was working for the corrupt mayor all along. The promised helicopter was never coming. She had walked willingly into her own grave. Rex let out a low rumble, breaking the heavy, suffocating silence. Logan stood up, his posture shifting instantly from a calm listener to a lethal operator. He chambered around into the captured pistol with a sharp metallic clack. "We cannot stay down here," Logan stated firmly. "They will flood these tunnels in less than 5 minutes. We are moving back up to the main floor." "But they are up there," Maya cried softly. "They have guns and night vision. We are completely trapped." "They think they trapped a terrified civilian," Logan replied, his eyes narrowing into dangerous slits in the dim red light. He reached down and gave Rex a firm pat on the shoulder. "They do not realize they just locked themselves in a cage with a Navy SEAL and a war dog. Let them come." Logan turned off the penlight, plunging the tunnel back into absolute darkness. The time for hiding was officially over. It was time to hunt. Logan pushed the heavy iron grate upward just enough to scan the factory floor above. The immediate area was clear of enemy patrols. He hoisted himself up silently and reached down to pull Maya out of the damp tunnel. Rex leaped up beside them without making a single sound. The main floor resembled a massive graveyard of industrial decay. Towering smelting pots and broken conveyor belts formed a complex maze of rusted steel and deep shadows. Logan knew this chaotic environment was his greatest weapon. He guided Maya toward a hollowed-out generator casing situated near the center of the warehouse. He instructed her to climb inside and wait. He ordered her to keep her eyes closed and her mouth completely shut, no matter what she heard. Maya nodded, clutching her leather bag tightly as she curled into the dark corner of the machine. Logan turned to Rex and gave a silent hand signal. The intelligent K9 melted instantly into the blackness, becoming a ghost within the factory. Logan grabbed a length of thick industrial chain hanging from a broken ceiling crane and began to set his first deadly trap. Two mercenaries walked slowly down the central aisle. They were both large men wearing bulky tactical vests and dark face masks covering everything except their eyes. Their night vision lenses emitted a faint green glow in the dark. They moved carefully, their weapons raised to their shoulders, checking every corner. Logan waited patiently on a rusted catwalk directly above them. He judged the distance and the timing perfectly. As the second man passed beneath the catwalk, Logan dropped the heavy chain. The steel links wrapped tightly around the mercenary's chest and arms, pinning his weapon to his side. Logan pulled upward with immense strength, hoisting the man off the concrete floor before he could utter a single sound. The first mercenary heard the faint creak of the chain and spun around. He found his partner gone. Confusion washed over his face for a split second. Logan dropped from the catwalk, landing heavily on the man's shoulders and driving him straight down to the floor. The impact knocked the mercenary unconscious instantly. Logan dragged both men into the shadows and secured their weapons. He moved fluidly, wasting absolutely no energy, blending back into the dark like a predator. A squad of 4 men approached from the eastern loading dock. They communicated through quick hand gestures, moving in a tight diamond formation. Logan needed to break their formation. He looked across the factory and spotted Rex. He tapped his thigh twice. The German Shepherd understood the command perfectly. Rex darted across a pile of loose sheet metal on the far side of the room. The loud, clattering noise echoed sharply through the quiet factory. The 4 mercenaries instantly turned their weapons toward the sound. They broke formation, stepping forward to investigate the dark corner. This was their fatal mistake. Logan struck from their blind spot. He lunged out from behind a concrete pillar. He grabbed the last man in the group, clamping a hand over his mouth and pulling him backward into the darkness. The man struggled wildly, but Logan used his combat knife to sever the straps of his heavy armor and incapacitate him with a swift strike to the neck. Logan lowered the man silently and moved to the next target. He became a relentless phantom. He used the rusted gears and hanging hooks to swing silently behind his enemies. He systematically dismantled the squad without firing a single shot. The remaining 2 men panicked. They spun around, aiming their rifles into the empty shadows, completely terrified of the unseen predator hunting them. Logan threw a heavy steel bolt across the room. It struck a metal drum with a loud clang. The mercenaries fired their weapons blindly at the drum, their muzzle flashes illuminating the factory in bright strobe lights. Logan stepped up closely behind them during the chaos and knocked their heads together with brutal force. They crumpled to the floor heavily. Vance realized his men were disappearing rapidly. His cold voice crackled violently over the captured radio attached to Logan's belt. "We are losing contact with perimeter teams. Form up immediately. Establish overlapping fields of fire. Shoot anything that moves in the dark." The remaining mercenaries abandoned their search patterns and grouped together near the center of the factory. They formed a tight circle, aiming their weapons outward. They slowly approached the exact area where Maya was hiding. Logan watched from a distance, his grip tightening on his captured pistol. 3 heavily armed soldiers walked directly toward the generator casing. One was a tall man with a jagged scar across his cheek, holding a heavy light machine gun. Maya tried to press herself deeper into the rusted casing, but her boot scraped loudly against a loose piece of scrap metal. The noise was tiny, but the scarred mercenary heard it clearly. He snapped his heavy weapon toward the generator. He flicked on a blinding white tactical flashlight attached to his barrel. The intense beam cut through the darkness and illuminated Maya's terrified face. She squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for death. "Target acquired," the scarred man shouted, his finger tightening on the trigger. He did not hesitate to shoot an unarmed woman. The heavy machine gun roared to life. Muzzle fire erupted in the dark. Suddenly, a black shape launched out of the shadows like a guided missile. Rex leapt directly into the line of fire. The brave K9 ignored the deafening gunfire and aimed his entire body at the scarred mercenary. Rex clamped his powerful jaws firmly onto the man's thigh. The sheer momentum of the heavy dog knocked the mercenary completely off balance. His aim dragged wildly downward, and the bullets sparked harmlessly against the thick metal floor instead of hitting Maya. But the chaotic spray of bullets carried a heavy price. A stray round grazed Rex's front left leg. The bullet tore through muscle and fur. Rex let out a sharp, agonizing yelp that echoed above the gunfire. He tumbled onto the hard concrete, his jaw releasing its grip as he hit the ground. Hearing his dog cry out in pain shattered Logan's disciplined restraint. The cold, calculated Navy SEAL vanished instantly. A primal, unhinged wrath took completely over. Logan abandoned all stealth and defense. He stepped out from the shadows directly into the open aisle. He raised his pistol and fired 3 rapid shots. The bullets struck the scarred mercenary squarely in the chest armor, driving him backward onto the floor. The remaining 2 men swung their rifles toward Logan. Logan did not take cover. He charged forward with terrifying speed. He tackled the first man with the force of a freight train, driving him hard into a steel pillar. The man's helmet cracked against the iron. Logan ripped the rifle from the man's hands and used the heavy stock to strike him unconscious. The last mercenary raised his weapon, his hands shaking in pure terror as he faced the enraged soldier. Logan threw his tactical knife with lethal precision. The blade sank deep into the man's shoulder, pinning him against a wooden crate. Logan walked over, pulled the knife free, and delivered a devastating punch that knocked the man completely out. The immediate area fell silent again. Logan ignored the groaning men. He dropped his weapons and rushed directly to his wounded partner. Rex lay panting on the floor, licking the bleeding wound on his leg. Logan knelt down, his hands shaking slightly as he inspected the injury. The bullet had missed the bone, but the dog was losing blood. Logan tore a strip of fabric from his own tactical sweater and bound the wound tightly. He looked up at the surrounding darkness, his eyes burning with absolute fury. The hunt was no longer about survival. It was about pure retaliation. Logan knelt on the cold concrete floor, his hands working quickly. He secured the makeshift fabric bandage tightly around Rex's bleeding leg. The German shepherd let out a very low, pained whine, but the dog immediately forced himself to stand. Rex pushed his wet nose firmly against Logan's chest. The loyal animal refused to quit the fight. Maya climbed slowly out of the rusted generator casing. She stared in horror at the unconscious mercenaries scattered across the dark aisle. She looked at Logan and Rex with immense, tearful gratitude. Logan did not offer a comforting smile. His face remained a mask of pure tactical focus. He picked up his captured rifle, checked the ammunition magazine, and scanned the dark rafters. The sprawling factory had grown entirely silent. The remaining mercenaries were no longer hunting them through the shadows. The aggressive search patterns had stopped completely. Logan unclipped the captured tactical radio from his belt to monitor the enemy communications. A sharp crackle of static broke the suffocating silence. Vance spoke over the secure frequency. Vance was the mercenary squad commander, a ruthless killer with a horribly scarred neck and cold, emotionless eyes. "All remaining units, fall back immediately," Vance ordered. "Abandon the current search grid. Rally at the central load-bearing pillars. We are changing our operational tactics." Logan narrowed his eyes, listening closely to the broadcast. "Begin planting the C4 charges," Vance commanded. "Place the explosives directly at the structural weak points. We are bringing the entire roof down." Logan felt a cold knot form tight in his stomach. He looked up at the massive steel columns supporting the towering ceiling of the facility. If those primary pillars blew, thousands of tons of rusted iron, concrete, and heavy machinery would collapse instantly. The factory would become a massive, inescapable tomb. Logan reached down to turn off the radio, but the device suddenly emitted a loud, piercing beep. An incoming encrypted transmission forcibly overrode the local tactical channel. The radio automatically switched to its loudspeaker mode. The new sound echoed softly in the quiet darkness. "Vance, give me a status update right now," a new voice demanded over the speaker. Maya froze completely. Her eyes widened in absolute shock. All the remaining color drained rapidly from her dirty face. She recognized that specific voice instantly. It belonged to an older man, possessing a smooth, sophisticated tone that usually commanded deep respect in the newsroom. It was Arthur Pendleton, her trusted editor-in-chief. "We encountered unexpected armed resistance, sir," Vance replied calmly. "There is a highly trained operative protecting the target. We lost several men." Arthur scoffed loudly. "I do not care about your disposable men," Arthur snapped, his voice dripping with cruel venom. "I pay you a fortune to handle my problems quietly. The mayor is getting incredibly impatient. I lured that naive little girl exactly where you wanted her. I promised her a fake rescue helicopter. She walked right into the trap like an obedient sheep. You just needed to finish the job." Maya clamped her trembling hands tightly over her mouth. Her breathing became frantic and shallow. The brutal betrayal hit her like a physical blow to the chest. The man she trusted like a father was actually the monster pulling the strings. Arthur Pendleton was not a righteous journalist fighting for the truth. He was the corrupt mayor's personal cleaner. He had arranged her execution. "The target is fully contained," Vance assured his boss. "We are rigging the main structural pillars with C4 explosives right now. We will detonate the charges in exactly 12 minutes. The blast will bring the entire roof down instantly. It will look exactly like a catastrophic industrial accident. The girl and the flash drive will be buried forever under 5,000 tons of scrap metal. Nothing will survive the collapse." Arthur let out a dark, satisfied chuckle. "Make absolutely sure of it," Arthur ordered coldly. "Do not fail me again, Vance. Burn it all down." The transmission ended with a sharp electronic click. The heavy silence returned, feeling far more suffocating than before. Maya dropped heavily to her knees. She let the leather bag fall onto the concrete floor. Her entire body shook with violent, silent sobs. She had risked her life to uncover the truth, only to hand her life directly to the enemy. There was no rescue helicopter coming. There was no hope of calling for backup. They were entirely alone in a dark building rigged to explode. She felt completely defeated. Logan knelt quickly beside her. He grabbed her shoulders firmly. He forced her to look up into his steady, intense eyes. "Listen to me," Logan commanded softly. "You cannot break down now. Your editor lied to you. He sold you out to the highest bidder. But he made one massive tactical mistake tonight." Maya looked at him through her tears, her voice barely a whisper. "What mistake?" "He locked you in here with me," Logan stated, his voice hard and cold as steel. "They think they can bury us in the dark. We are going to prove them wrong. We have less than 12 minutes to stop those bombs from detonating. I need you to stand up, grab your bag, and fight for your life." Maya took a deep, shaky breath. She looked at the fresh blood soaking through the bandage on Rex's leg. She looked at the fierce determination burning brightly in Logan's eyes. She reached down and picked up her leather bag. She slung it tightly over her shoulder and wiped her tears away. Her terrible fear slowly transformed into a burning, righteous anger. "What do we do?" Maya asked, her voice finally steady. Logan stood up tall and checked the action on his captured rifle. He looked toward the distant center of the factory, where faint flashlight beams danced across the massive steel pillars. The mercenaries were working quickly to set the explosives. "We become their worst nightmare," Logan replied. "Stay close to the shadows. Keep moving toward the rear exit grid. Rex and I are going to have a very loud, very violent conversation with Mr. Vance." Logan signaled the German Shepherd. Rex bared his teeth, ready to finish the fight. They moved forward into the darkness to hunt the hunters. The glowing red digits on the captured tactical radio displayed exactly 12 minutes remaining. 12 minutes until the massive steel factory collapsed into a pile of rubble. Logan led Maya through the dark, navigating the maze of rusted machinery with absolute precision. He stopped behind a heavy blast wall just outside the central loading zone. He instructed Maya to hide inside a thick, concrete drainage pipe protruding from the floor. He handed her his captured pistol. He told her to aim at the opening and pull the trigger if anyone except him looked inside. Maya gripped the heavy weapon with trembling hands, nodding her understanding. Logan turned his attention back to the massive load-bearing pillars 50 yards away. 4 heavily armed mercenaries moved rapidly around the thick steel columns. They slapped blocks of gray C4 explosive onto the metal and wired them to a centralized digital receiver. Their flashlights cut sharp arcs through the dusty air. Logan knew he could not shoot them from a distance. If a stray bullet struck the highly volatile blasting caps, the entire factory would detonate instantly. He needed a distraction, and he needed to close the distance for hand-to-hand combat. Logan scanned his immediate surroundings. He spotted a rusted metal door marked for maintenance. He slipped inside the small room. His eyes quickly adjusted to the dim light filtering through the cracked window. The room contained exactly what he needed. Rows of industrial cleaning supplies lined the metal shelves. He grabbed 2 empty glass jars from a workbench. He quickly poured a heavy dose of ammonia-based floor cleaner into the glass. He found a bucket of aluminum shavings near a rusted grinding wheel and dumped handfuls of the metal dust into the liquid. Finally, he added industrial bleach. The volatile mixture began to bubble violently, emitting a harsh, noxious smell. He capped the glass jars tightly. He had just created 2 highly effective crude chemical smoke bombs. Logan stepped back out into the factory floor. He looked down at Rex. The German Shepherd stood faithfully by his side, favoring his bleeding front leg. Logan knelt and looked directly into the dog's intelligent eyes. He pointed toward the far side of the central pillars, pointing at a stack of hollow aluminum ventilation pipes. He gave a sharp, complex hand signal. It was a command for a loud distraction. Rex understood immediately. The brave canine moved away from Logan, limping softly into the shadows. Every step caused a sharp jolt of pain to shoot up his injured leg, but Rex ignored the agony. The dog reached the designated area. He sniffed the ground and found a heavy, solid steel wrench discarded near the pipes. Rex opened his jaws and bit down hard on the metal tool. He limped closer to the largest hollow ventilation pipe. He braced his back legs. With a sudden violent twist of his strong neck, Rex swung the heavy wrench directly into the hollow metal pipe. A deafening, ringing crash echoed through the entire warehouse. The sound magnified inside the pipe, booming like a massive church bell. The 4 mercenaries at the central pillars froze completely. They whipped their rifles around, aiming their blinding flashlights toward the sudden noise. Rex did not stop. He swung his head again and again. He struck the metal pipe repeatedly. The loud, chaotic ringing completely overwhelmed the mercenaries' senses. Their squad leader shouted frantic orders, pointing his weapon toward the dark corner. 3 of the men broke formation and advanced cautiously toward the deafening sound, leaving only 1 guard at the pillars to finish wiring the detonator. This was the exact opening Logan needed. He stepped out from behind the concrete blast wall. He hurled the 2 glass jars with absolute precision. The jars flew silently through the air and smashed violently against the concrete floor, directly at the base of the central pillars. The volatile chemical mixture reacted instantly with the oxygen in the room. A massive, thick cloud of dense white smoke erupted outward. The toxic smoke expanded rapidly, swallowing the massive steel columns and the remaining mercenary completely. The three advancing guards turned around in pure confusion. The thick chemical cloud immediately blinded their night vision goggles. The infrared light reflected directly back into their lenses, turning their vision into a blinding wall of static white light. The men ripped the useless goggles off their helmets, coughing violently as the noxious fumes burned their throats and eyes. Total chaos consumed the enemy squad. Logan abandoned his rifle. He drew his razor-sharp combat knife from its tactical sheath. He sprinted directly into the thick, blinding smoke. He did not need to see. He relied entirely on his spatial awareness and the sounds of his enemies coughing. He found his first target immediately. He slipped behind the disoriented mercenary. He clamped his left hand over the man's mouth to muffle any scream. He drove the combat knife upward into the soft gap between the body armor and the helmet. The man went limp instantly, and Logan lowered his body silently to the floor. The second mercenary heard the heavy thud of his partner falling. He spun around blindly, swinging the heavy stock of his rifle through the smoke. Logan ducked cleanly under the wild swing. He stepped inside the man's guard, driving his knee fiercely into the mercenary's abdomen. As the man bent forward in pain, Logan grabbed his tactical vest and threw him hard against a steel pillar. The impact knocked the breath from the mercenary's lungs. Logan finished the fight with a brutal strike to the temple using the heavy pommel of his knife. Two men were down in a matter of seconds. Logan turned toward the center of the pillars. The thick smoke began to clear slightly. He spotted the final two targets. One guard stood near the explosive charges, screaming for backup. The squad leader stood right beside him. The leader held a heavy black electronic detonator in his left hand. The digital timer on the screen glowed a menacing bright red. The countdown displayed exactly 45 seconds remaining. The squad leader panicked. He saw the bodies of his men on the floor. He decided to ignore the safety protocols. He raised his thumb, preparing to press the primary detonation button and blow the building early to guarantee the kill. Logan lunged forward like a striking viper. He crossed the distance in 3 massive strides. The squad leader saw the shadow approaching and tried to press the button. Logan swung his left arm out, violently striking the leader's wrist. The heavy blow knocked the detonator out of the man's grip. The black box flew into the air and clattered across the concrete floor. The squad leader roared in anger and reached for his sidearm. Logan did not give him the chance. He drove his combat knife deep into the man's shoulder, twisting the blade sharply. The leader collapsed to his knees, screaming in agony. The final mercenary raised his rifle to shoot Logan at point-blank range. Before he could pull the trigger, a dark blur burst through the dissipating smoke. Rex leaped onto the mercenary's back, his sharp teeth sinking deep into the man's shoulder armor. The heavy impact drove the man face first into the concrete floor, knocking him out cold. Logan did not waste a single microsecond checking on the bodies. He dove across the floor, sliding on his knees until his hands slammed down onto the black detonator box. He grabbed the device and looked at the glowing red screen. The timer showed exactly 30 seconds left. The system was locked. He could not simply press a cancel button. Logan drew his combat knife again. He pried the plastic casing off the back of the detonator. He exposed a complex web of colored wires connected to the primary circuit board. He knew explosive wiring from his Navy SEAL demolition training. He identified the primary power lead. He slipped the sharp edge of his blade under a thick red wire and sliced it cleanly in half. The glowing red numbers on the screen froze instantly at 28 seconds. The screen flickered twice and died completely. The immediate threat of the explosive collapse was neutralized. Logan dropped the useless detonator onto the floor, exhaling a long, heavy breath. He looked up at Rex. The brave dog stood panting heavily in the clearing smoke, his tail wagging slightly despite the bleeding leg. They had won the battle against the clock, but Logan knew the war was not over yet. The toxic smoke began to clear completely from the factory floor. Logan stood over the disabled detonator, his chest heaving with exertion. He looked toward the concrete blast wall where he had hidden Maya. A sudden, piercing scream shattered the quiet aftermath of the battle. Logan snapped his head toward the sound. The thick iron grate covering the drainage pipe was thrown violently aside. Standing there was Vance, the ruthless mercenary commander. He possessed a tall, heavily muscled frame, a horribly scarred neck, and dead, emotionless eyes. He had bypassed the central ambush entirely. Vance gripped Maya brutally by the hair, dragging her out of the pipe. He held a heavy silver revolver pressed tightly against her temple. Maya sobbed in terror, her hands desperately clutching the leather messenger bag. "Drop your weapons, operative!" Vance roared, his voice echoing off the high ceiling. "Drop them right now, or I blow her head off." Logan immediately raised his hands. He let his captured rifle fall to the concrete. He reached into his waistband, pulled out the pistol, and tossed it away. He kicked his combat knife across the floor. He stood completely unarmed. "Let her go," Logan commanded, his voice cold and steady. "You lost your squad. The bombs are dead. It is over." "It is never over until I secure the objective," Vance sneered. He yanked Maya backward. He dragged her toward a rusted iron staircase attached to the factory wall. The stairs led upward to a massive, suspended industrial crane system hanging exactly 20 meters above the concrete floor. The metal groaned loudly under their weight. "Bring me the flash drive," Vance shouted down as he climbed higher. "Bring it up here alone. If I see that dog follow you, I push her over the edge." Logan looked down at Rex. The loyal German shepherd paced frantically at the base of the stairs. Rex barked loudly, his protective instincts raging, but his injured leg prevented him from leaping up the broken metal steps. Logan gave the dog a firm command to stay. He grabbed his own shoulder and began the long climb. The iron staircase was ancient and unstable. Several steps were missing completely. Logan ignored the stairs and gripped the thick vertical support cables. He pulled his heavy frame upward using only raw upper body strength. The muscles in his arms and back burned fiercely. He climbed 20 meters straight up into the dark rafters. The air grew significantly colder near the broken skylights. He reached the suspended catwalk. It was a narrow grid of rusted steel, grating suspended by thick chains. It swayed violently with every movement. Maya knelt on the grating, clutching the metal rail tightly to keep from falling into the black abyss below. Vance stood a few feet away from her. The mercenary commander smiled a cruel, crooked smile. He tucked his revolver away and drew a massive, serrated combat dagger from his thigh sheath. He wanted to finish this up close. "You ruined a very lucrative contract tonight," Vance hissed, stepping slowly onto the swaying bridge. "I am going to enjoy cutting you apart." Logan did not say a single word. He stepped fully onto the suspended catwalk. The rusted chains shrieked loudly. He kept his balance perfectly centered. He stared directly into Vance's dead eyes. Vance lunged forward with terrifying speed. He thrust the serrated dagger directly toward Logan's chest. Logan sidestepped narrowly. The sharp blade sliced through the fabric of his tactical sweater, missing his skin by a fraction of an inch. Logan countered instantly. He delivered a brutal palm strike to Vance's elbow, trying to dislodge the weapon. Vance was incredibly strong and highly trained. He absorbed the blow, pivoted on his heel, and swung the knife in a wide, lethal arc. Logan leaned backward. The blade passed inches from his throat. The catwalk swayed violently under their shifting weight. Maya screamed and squeezed her eyes shut, clinging to the railing. Rex continued to bark furiously from the factory floor far below, unable to reach his master. Vance pressed his attack relentlessly. He unleashed a flurry of rapid stabs and slashes. Logan deflected the strikes using his forearms, but the confined space severely limited his movement. He backed up toward the edge of the platform. Vance saw the opening and charged like a raging bull. He drove the serrated dagger forward with all his strength. Logan twisted his torso, but he was a second too slow. The jagged blade plunged deep into Logan's left shoulder. Searing, white-hot agony exploded through his body. Blood instantly soaked the dark fabric of his sweater. Vance twisted the knife cruelly, a vicious grin spreading across his scarred face. "Die," the mercenary whispered. Logan refused to fall. He harnessed the immense pain and converted it into pure, explosive energy. He did not pull away from the blade. Instead, he stepped directly into the attack. He grabbed Vance's knife arm with his right hand, locking his fingers tightly around the mercenary's wrist. Logan threw his entire body weight forward, executing a flawless tactical roll over Vance's extended arm. The sudden, immense pressure applied against the joint caused the bone to snap loudly. Vance screamed in agony, his grip releasing the handle of the dagger. Logan completed the roll and sprang to his feet. The knife remained lodged tightly in his shoulder, but he ignored the pain entirely. Vance stumbled backward, clutching his broken arm. The mercenary commander realized he had lost the upper hand. He looked at Maya, intending to grab her and drag her down with him. Logan did not give him the chance to take another step. Logan planted his left foot firmly on the rusted grating. He spun his body with explosive rotational force. He launched a devastating roundhouse kick. His heavy combat boot struck Vance squarely in the center of the chest. The impact sounded like a hammer hitting an anvil. The immense force of the blow lifted Vance completely off his feet. The mercenary commander flew backward over the low metal railing. His hands grasped frantically at the empty air. He plummeted backward into the pitch-black abyss. Vance did not even have time to scream. He fell 20 meters straight down. His heavy body crashed violently into a jagged pile of scrap iron on the factory floor below. A sickening crunch echoed through the warehouse, followed by absolute silence. The greatest threat was permanently eliminated. Logan dropped heavily onto one knee on the swaying catwalk. He grabbed the handle of the dagger lodged in his shoulder. With a sharp, agonizing pull, he ripped the serrated blade free and tossed it over the edge. He applied intense pressure to the bleeding wound with his opposite hand. He breathed heavily, the cold wind from the broken skylights cooling the sweat on his face. He looked over at Maya. She was still clinging to the railing, trembling violently. "He's gone," Logan said softly, his voice strained from the pain. "You're safe now." Maya opened her eyes and looked at the blood pouring from his shoulder. She scrambled across the rusted grating and wrapped her arms tightly around his uninjured side. She cried into his chest, entirely overwhelmed by the sheer relief of survival. From far below, a sharp, joyful bark echoed upward. Rex stood at the bottom of the stairs, his tail wagging furiously. The battle in the air was over, and the master had won. Logan stood up slowly on the swaying catwalk, pressing his right hand tightly against his bleeding left shoulder. The immediate danger was gone, but the factory was far from safe. A sudden, violent tremor shook the entire massive structure. A deafening boom echoed from the deep subterranean level directly beneath them. Vance had carried a dead man's switch connected to a secondary, smaller set of explosives hidden in the basement. The initial blast was not large enough to vaporize the building instantly, but it heavily compromised the structural integrity of the ancient steel mill. Rusted support beams groaned loudly under the shifting weight. Concrete dust rained down from the towering ceiling in thick, suffocating sheets. The building was dying. "We need to leave right now," Logan commanded, his voice cutting through the chaotic noise. He grabbed Maya by her uninjured arm and guided her rapidly down the unstable iron staircase. They moved as fast as they physically could. The metal steps buckled and snapped under their boots. They reached the ground floor just as a massive section of the overhead catwalk detached completely. The heavy steel structure crashed into the darkness behind them, sending a wave of sparks and debris across the concrete. Logan rushed over to Rex. The brave German shepherd tried to stand up to greet his master, but his injured front leg buckled immediately. Logan did not hesitate for a single second. He ignored the searing, white-hot pain radiating from his own wounded shoulder. He bent down and scooped the heavy K9 into his strong arms, holding the dog securely against his broad chest. Rex rested his head against Logan's neck, trusting the soldier completely. "Run toward the rear loading bay," Logan shouted over the deafening roar of collapsing metal. "Do not look back." Maya sprinted ahead through the dark maze of industrial decay. Her boots slipped repeatedly on the dusty, blood-stained concrete, but absolute terror fueled her legs. Logan followed closely behind her, carrying the massive weight of the dog while navigating the falling debris. The factory floor began to cave in violently. Enormous smelting pots toppled over, smashing into the ground and shattering into pieces. A thick cloud of choking grey ash chased them relentlessly down the central aisle like a physical monster. Maya reached the heavy steel double doors at the back of the warehouse. She hit the rusted crash bar with her entire body weight. The doors burst open. They ran outside into the cool, damp night air, just as the entire central roof of the factory collapsed completely inward. A massive shockwave of displaced air knocked them all forcefully to the muddy ground. Logan shielded Rex with his own body. They watched in silent awe as the enormous factory folded onto itself, turning into a towering mountain of twisted steel, crushed concrete, and dense gray dust. The deadly arena was permanently erased. Logan sat up slowly in the wet mud. He checked on Rex first. The dog panted heavily, but appeared completely safe from the falling debris. Maya sat next to them, clutching her leather bag tightly against her chest. She coughed up the thick dust, her eyes wide as she stared at the destroyed factory. She looked at Logan, her voice trembling with pure disbelief. "We actually survived," Maya whispered. "The fight is not finished yet," Logan stated firmly. He reached into a small waterproof pouch secured to his tactical belt. He pulled out a heavy-duty, encrypted satellite phone. The local signal jammers were buried in the rubble, allowing a clear connection to the orbital network. He dialed a highly secure number known only to a select few. A man answered on the very first ring. It was Special Agent Harris, a senior director at the FBI National Headquarters. Harris was a trusted military contact, a man completely outside the corrupt mayor's sphere of political influence. Logan explained the tactical situation rapidly and clearly. He detailed the ambush, the mercenary team, and the survival of the primary target. He took the flash drive from Maya. He plugged the small device into a specialized tactical data transmitter attached to the base of his satellite phone. He initiated a direct, secure upload of the entire encrypted drive. The financial ledgers, the illicit client lists, the offshore routing numbers, and the audio recording of Arthur Pendleton ordering the assassination transmitted directly to the federal servers. "Data received and verified, Logan," Harris said over the secure line, his tone turning incredibly sharp. "This evidence is absolute. I am deploying the federal tactical raid teams immediately. Nobody is walking away from this mess tonight." Less than an hour later, the quiet midnight air of the city was completely shattered by the wailing of federal sirens. Heavily armed FBI strike teams simultaneously breached the iron gates of the mayor's luxurious hillside mansion and Arthur Pendleton's upscale penthouse apartment. The corrupt politician and the traitorous newspaper editor were dragged forcefully out of their beds and into the flashing red and blue lights. Federal agents secured their wrists tightly in steel handcuffs. The massive criminal empire collapsed just as violently and completely as the abandoned steel mill. The reign of terror was officially over. The dark night slowly faded. The sun began to rise, casting a warm, golden light over the waking city. The chaotic violence transitioned into a peaceful, quiet morning. Logan sat in a sterile, brightly lit room at an emergency veterinary clinic. He wore a fresh gray shirt provided by the medical staff. His left shoulder was heavily bandaged and stitched perfectly. He sat on a small metal stool, gently rubbing the head of his loyal partner. Rex slept peacefully on a soft orthopedic bed, his injured leg wrapped securely in clean white gauze. The heavy pain medication kept the brave K9 completely comfortable. The dog breathed in a slow, steady rhythm. The clinic door opened softly. Maya stepped inside the room holding 2 steaming paper cups of coffee. She had washed the dark dirt, sweat, and dried blood from her face. She wore borrowed clothes, looking incredibly exhausted but completely free from fear. She handed a warm cup to Logan and sat in the chair directly opposite him. She looked down at the sleeping German shepherd, her eyes filling with profound gratitude. She then looked up at the quiet, stoic soldier who had pulled her from the absolute jaws of death. Maya did not need to say thank you again. She offered a soft, genuine smile that reached her eyes. Logan nodded slowly, a rare, gentle expression softening his hardened features. A profound, unbreakable bond now existed between the young investigative journalist, the elite Navy SEAL, and the incredibly brave K9. It was a unique bond forged in the darkest shadows of the city and sealed forever in the bright dawn of absolute justice. The incredible story of Logan, Rex, and Maya teaches us a profound lesson about the nature of true courage. It shows us that heroes do not always wear capes. Sometimes they wear tactical gear and have 4 paws. In my perspective, this story is a powerful reminder that no matter how deep the darkness of corruption and betrayal gets, the light of truth and the fierce loyalty of a faithful friend will always find a way to break through. When the world tells you to run and hide, sometimes the only right choice is to stand your ground and fight for what is right. May God bless you with the unwavering courage of a soldier and the pure, loyal heart of a K9 companion whenever you face your own darkest hours. If you believe that light will always conquer the dark, please comment Amen below to claim that blessing. If this story inspired you, please take a moment to share it with your friends and family. Let us know in the comments section what you would have done if you were trapped in that dark factory. And please, do not forget to subscribe to our channel for more thrilling and inspiring stories about the incredible bond between humans and animals. Stay brave and stay safe.
Thank you for watching and being a part of our community. Remember to hug your pets a little tighter tonight, and we'll see you in the next story. Take care.